First up today, let's go to Richard calling in from Tennessee. Richard, what's your question for Adriel?
Greetings, gentlemen. I have a question that I hope won't get me in the doghouse, but I've never really fully understood the issue of original sin. I know that the Bible tells us that in Genesis that Eve sinned first, yet God placed the blame of all of sinful man on Adam. I've heard people say that Eve was deceived, but Adam knew what he was doing. So does that mean women are not held to the same standards as men when it comes to sin?
Hey, Richard, thank you for that excellent question. And I think part of the issue is, in it seems like specifically the question that you're asking is, why is it that typically in the Bible, in the New Testament, the blame gets placed on Adam? You know, in Romans chapter 5, for example, when Paul is talking about the entrance of sin into the world, he's talking about Adam and all of us being in Adam. Why doesn't he focus on Eve? I mean, wasn't she the one that was initially deceived? And there's a couple of things here. One, there's the idea of, or the reality of, the fact that Adam, as the first man, was called to lead his family, the head of this holy household, and to guard his wife from the serpent. And so he didn't do that. He didn't protect his wife from the serpent there in the garden. This is a part of his priestly duty there in the garden. And so it wasn't just that Eve got deceived. It was also that Adam didn't take responsibility. And so I think there's a lesson here for us as well, as husbands, as those who are seeking to lead homes, households. We bear a level of responsibility for the spiritual nurture and care of our families that we can't just set aside. And the sad reality is many people have. And so what you're seeing here in particular is God holding Adam responsible as the covenant head of humanity for the entrance of sin into the world. And of course, the good news of the gospel sweeps in because Jesus came as the second Adam. That's why, he's placed side by side there with the first Adam in places like Romans chapter 5 and in 1 Corinthians as well, to do what Adam failed to do, to cast out the serpent, to protect his bride, the church, and that's what Jesus still does today. And so what you're really getting there is an emphasis on the responsibility that the husband has, that Adam had there. And as I said, that also relates to us as Christian husbands today as well. That's not to say that, that Eve wasn't also responsible. She certainly was. And she experienced some of that curse that came as a result of sin in her own body as Genesis continues to go on. Genesis talks about the pain in childbirth and so forth. But, just the level of responsibility that was placed on Adam there as the covenant head of humanity, and sin entering the world through him because he failed. He didn't obey the Lord, and the charge to protect his wife and to guard the garden from the serpent. Thanks for the question, Richard. I don't think you're in the doghouse, so God bless.